Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 171 of the Hammer Territory podcast. I'm your host, Rowland. It is Thursday evening. It is opening day, and I'm joined by two of my co-hosts on the show. They are Shawn Coleman and Stephen Tolbert. One of my co-hosts coming off of a fantastic college basketball win. The other one is as nervous as I am about the games on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
How are we doing?
It was a rough day. Let's be honest. Opening day, it was a rough day. Not the way anybody wanted to start. It did help me a lot that Bama played immediately after and then just beat the piss out of BYU. But yeah, we got a lot to talk about. It's going to be an interesting show because we got some things to discuss about what went down today.
Yeah, just glad opening day's here. Was excited all day. Was excited to see how the start of the game was with the offense and Chris Sale. But I'm just going to come out and say it. No filter here. You just hope that what happened today is not a microcosm of what we see happen throughout the season. So.
That is certainly the case, and we should say at the top of this show, in case we have some new listeners, I would imagine if the Braves won today, we might have a few more new listeners than we do after a Braves loss. It's just the way things happen to go. But hey, it's a new season. We are Hammer Territory. We are part of the Foul Territory network of podcasts. We cover the Braves all year round. There are four of us that we do basically different pairings, trios, quartets along the way. Our fourth, Scott Coleman's not here, but we wanted to go three-man on this opening day recap episode. By the way, it's our fourth show since Sunday night. So we've been very busy all week long. Download, tell your friends, subscribe to the podcast. But we're going to be diving in basically entirely to what became a 7-4 loss for the Braves on opening day. A lot to get to from this one. If Shawn's going to be pessimistic, we're all in deep trouble. Shawn's the resident optimist on this podcast. If we've already broken Shawn after one day, it's going to be a long season. I'm kind of kidding, but no, it's the Braves did have the lead for large portions. They were not, and at any point were the Braves in a dominant position in this game. They only led by one run at a time. It was 4-3 going to the bottom of the seventh inning, and then as we'll get into in more depth later on, the bullpen. And perhaps the bullpen management. I don't want to speak for you guys. The bullpen management was not my favorite thing today in the game. Let the Braves down. I guess we'll start here. What is the biggest takeaway? Shawn already kind of gave one, which I think is a right one. Like hopefully this not being foreshadowing. But Stephen, what was your all right, now that you've had 4 hours to kind of decompress, do you have a number one lead takeaway from the game? Is it just that it's one game, or is it are you panicking? What's in the mind of Stephen Tolbert on a Thursday night?
So I was thinking during the game, what is the best, if you were coming up with a formula, what is the best formula for having people panic the most after one game? What would you do if you were trying to get the most people to panic after one game? And what I came up with was, if the part of the team that the majority of people feel like is a weakness or the weakest part of the team is the reason you lose game one, I think the panic meter goes up much more so than if Chris Sale had just gotten lit up today, or if the offense, if the offense was bad today, then there would have been a little bit of panic because of what happened last year. But if Chris Sale got lit up today and that was all it was, then it'd be one thing. But so many people have the bullpen kind of tagged as the question mark of this team because of how little was done in the offseason, what they lost. And so today, in a lot of ways, was kind of the worst case scenario for how this game could have gone if we're trying to manage panic on the fan base. And so I think a lot of the reaction we saw post game, and in our mentions on Twitter or X, is because of that. The thing that people had the biggest question about was kind of the reason they lost the game, and it's kind of led to what it's led to.
Yeah, I think that's well said, basically, as to how this unfolded. And, we can get into it now or we can save it for later. But, there was a lot of reaction. And I, as people that listen to the podcast will know, my default tends to be, especially in game one, but even later on in the season, to not panic, to not overreact. And honestly, I know this about myself and the way that I cover sports generally, not even just the Braves. I'm going to be almost defiant the other direction of being you know what, guys, this is one game. It does not mean the bullpen is going to be a disaster all season long, all those things. And I think actually out of the four of us, I think this is probably true. I might have been the most optimistic about the bullpen coming into the year, at least on the record. Not that I was screaming about how I was really excited about the bullpen. We were all, I think, equally, at least to some degree, frustrated with the lack of additions to the bullpen. Even I said that. I just took the stance of this is still a pretty good bullpen, in my opinion, on paper. I still think that now. I don't think it was managed very well in this game, which we can talk about. And I, because of that, like, you know, the Aaron Bummer thing, we will not do on the show because it's going to happen a million times for whatever reason. I don't think he was like awesome today, but he was not the huge problem. It was the guy who came in before him. But yeah, I think you're right, Steven. It's long story short. I think you're right. If you were drawing this up, maybe a blowout loss would have been worse. But I tend to think a close loss for some reason just engenders more reaction. If the Braves were down 10-0 in the third inning, it would have been funny. It would have been frustrating, but it wouldn't have been like the angst level wouldn't be so high because it's like, all right, guys, it's just easier to be like, this was just a bad one. Throw it away. Chris Sale was the NL Cy Young winner last year. He's still good. It's going to be fine. Whereas the bullpen doing this is less exciting. Shawn, do you agree with that sentiment, generally speaking?
Yes, I do. In terms of, I do think a blowout loss was going to be. I would have dealt with that easier. It just wasn't our day. Because it was a clear. I would understand that is the best way that I could do it. If we just had a bad day, I could easily accept that because I could understand it. Today's game, I can't understand it. I feel like I could go myself do a solo podcast for 45 minutes for 15 reasons as to why I question what Brian Snitker did. But the reason why, I'm not meaning to hit the panic button, but I do feel it is relevant to be a bit concerned with how today's game went, is because it's not just about today's game. The same thing that has been there for years when it comes to Brian Snitker's bullpen management showed up today. And the problem is, in my opinion, and I think this is a shared opinion, is that this time around, with the fact that our bullpen does not have as much quality depth as it once did, as Scott pointed out, it's even more important that Brian Snitker be on point with his bullpen management. And he was not today. And the other thing that concerns me about this is that he wasn't, because he used someone that was literally brought into the organization 2 weeks ago, brought in through 3 innings in spring training, when you had Pierce Johnson, Aaron Bummer, so many other options in there that had been in the organization for years. And Snitker basically told those guys, I trust this person over y'all. I'm not saying that causes negativity on the team, but there are just so many ripple effects from what happened today, in my opinion. It's just frustrating because we've seen it time and time again.
Yeah, I think it's certainly well said. And I do want to dig in, and we're going to dig in on the process. Because this is first and foremost, maybe, we tie on the list, a process-driven podcast. We like to go through the details, it's not always the results. The process is important too. We'll get into all of that and more after a word from our partners on the show. All right, guys, let us dig in to what happened late in this game. So I'll set it up by saying this. The Braves are up 4-3 going to the 7th inning. Dylan Lee came in the 6th, which wasn't a big shock to me. It's a 1-run game. It is what it is. It's a close game. Dylan Lee is good. We are a pro Dylan Lee podcast. The Braves have 4 guys that I think we all seem to trust in the bullpen. Exactly 4, probably, but they have 4. And they have 4 innings to cover. It's like, all right, Dylan Lee first. Presumably it'll be Aaron Bummer or it'll be Pierce Johnson in the 7th. And then it was not. It was Hector Neris. It was 8-9-1 coming up for the Padres. That's perhaps relevant, even if it wasn't a deciding factor for me. I want to go back to Shawn, because Shawn's the one that teed us up on this. And then Steven will weigh in. But what was your thought process before the meltdown happened? Because Neris, spoiler alert, everybody, came in and allowed 3 straight hits, including a home run. And it didn't go very well. And yes, Bummer came in and couldn't put up the fire, but the damage was kind of not all the way done, but it was mostly done already. Shawn, were you, as I was, freaking out as Neris came in, or was it just where were you at during that?
It was a pivotal moment. It clearly was, the opportunity for Snitker to show, hey, do I go with what makes common sense here? Or am I going to go with the questionable move? And he went with the questionable move. And that's the other thing that kind of, I was hoping to see in this scenario is that Brian Snitker coming into this game, he had to know that, listen, it's the first game of the season. I get that. But there also this is a bigger game than most, right? It's opening day. You've got some of your players back playing in the same spot where last year our season ended, but they're back, they're healthy. You've got your ace on the mound. And for the rest of this series, you probably don't have the advantage when it comes to the starting pitching. So you're in a position up 1 run with the ability to be able to take game 1. It could be a really good way to start the road trip, really good way to start the season. You use Dylan Lee, who just gave you a crisp inning. Your bullpen obviously is fresh because it's the first game of the season. And you have all of your options ready and available, and especially your most quality and trustworthy ones. And despite all that, he still goes with Hector Neris. That's what stood out to me. This was a pivotal moment in which everything suggested go with the arms that we think that you trust, and it didn't happen.
Steven, I want you to dig into what you told me, because I did not watch Brian Snitker's post game. I was doing triple duty tonight, but I know Steven did. And when Shawn mentioned the thing about having everybody fresh, that was also my thought, but apparently that was not what Brian Snitker had in mind going into this one, even though it was opening day. It seems funny to be kind of rationing out your bullpen on opening day, but apparently that was part of the thought process.
Yeah, so I always like to listen when I can. I try to listen to the post-game presser just because I want to get Snit's. I want to get his process. I want to get I want to understand why he did what he did, because oftentimes it's more important than the actual results. And that's what he said was, the Braves have 7 games in a row to start the year. There's no typical off day after game 1 like there normally is. And so because of that, he's kind of rationing out his bullpen for the first 7 games of the year, where he's like, everyone's going to have to pitch. And so I don't know what to make of this, because, and here's what's weird to me about this, is that the one thing Snitker has never really had trouble with is how to use his bullpen when the Braves have a lead.
Yeah. Agreed.
The one thing he's had trouble with is how to use your bullpen when the Braves are either tied or down a run. But one thing we've never had to worry about was when the Braves have a lead, he's usually pretty aggressive with his highest leverage, best relievers. And that was what was concerning today, was if we're talking about process, about how this affects the rest of the season, is did he bring in Hector Neris because he thought he's one of his best relievers? Because if that's the case, that's a problem. That's a big problem. Yeah. Did he bring in Hector Neris because he's got 7 games to play in a row and he's trying to ration out his bullpen? That's a problem as well, but it's not as big a problem, because I disagree with that. Like Shawn said, you got Chris Sale on the mound. This is probably your best pitching matchup for a while. Maybe Schwellenbach, whoever they throw in game 3, but you need to win this game, quite honestly, because of what you got coming the rest of the trip. If you got to pitch everybody, you might as well pitch your best relievers to win the game. So I disagree with that, but I can get over it. If that's all it is, I can get over a little bit. But watching him go to somebody who was a minor league signing, who only pitched 3 times in spring training, with a 1-run lead in the 7th inning in a high leverage spot, that's what the stunning part was, is they had a lead. Like this is the spot where normally they ice this, they knock this out. Like this has never been his problem. Snitker, I'm talking about, with his bullpen. So he did say after the game that they were trying to manage the bullpen, which I know sounds crazy on opening day. It does. I had laughed when I texted it, or when I tweeted it to him. I laughed too. Like, it is crazy. That's crazy notion on opening day to already be managing your bullpen. But more concerning to me is that in a high leverage spot, they went with Hector Neris with a lead, which we've just never seen before.
Yeah, that's what got me too. And it's not about piling on Hector Neris either. Like, I saw some of that after, like, why are you? It's his first. Look, I'm not saying anything about Hector Neris. Hector Neris has been a good reliever for a long time. He's also, like Steven just alluded to, was a minor league signing. He's in his mid-30s. He should be your 7th guy probably in the bullpen. Yeah. If you want to say Suarez, who they just got for Ian Anderson, is the 8th guy. He's the long man. That's fine with me. But at the absolute best, Neris is the 6th best guy in your bullpen. Him and De Los Santos, whatever you want to say, at the best, he's your 6th best guy. It's opening day. It's a 1-run game, like you said. It doesn't get more high leverage than that. 7th inning, clean start. Also, they had other options. That's what gets me. It wasn't like someone's down that day. If they were worried about somebody or whatever, Snip wouldn't say that now. But Dylan Lee threw 9 pitches. You could have just left Dylan Lee in the game.
Yeah.
You could have gone to Pierce Johnson. You could have gone to Aaron Bummer, who I know Braves fans hate, but Aaron Bummer is better than Hector Neris by a lot. And also was pretty much fine in this game, I thought. And yeah, I'll just to be a little bit charitable to Hector Neris. If you look at the pitches that were actually hit by the Padres, they actually weren't that bad. He actually didn't. I don't think he pitched as badly as 3 batters, 3 hits indicates, just to be slightly fair to him. But it shouldn't have been out there. And one thing that I had a problem with post game, I don't know about you guys if you saw this at all. And I get it. The bullpen was a weakness, or was a potential one coming into the season. But it really wasn't the top 4 people were worried about, including me. Anyway, I don't want to speak for y'all, but it was the top 4 I feel really good about. Still, it's 5 through 8 in the bullpen. And this game was not it didn't have to be, in my opinion. Didn't need to be an indictment of quote unquote the bullpen, because the way that it was managed, you put Dylan Lee in the 6th inning. You could have, there's no guarantee that Bummer, Johnson, Iglesias slammed the door on a 1-run game, obviously. But the real question about the bullpen was the depth of the bullpen, and you didn't need to test that today. They didn't lose the game because Alex didn't invest in the bullpen today. That's my opinion anyway. Like, I get why that's the reaction coming out of this game. I do understand it because of what Steven said at the very top of this. You lose again because of the bullpen. The natural reaction for people that were always skeptical was going to be, rah, Alex, you didn't add the bullpen. They should have added the bullpen. We said that this winter. This game was not an example of that, in my opinion. This game was a managerial problem, much more than a Alex didn't add to the bullpen problem. Yeah, could you say that would it be better if Hector Neris was somebody better? Yes, but you still shouldn't be using your 7th reliever in the 7th inning of opening day in a 1-run game. That's kind of where there's a bit of nuance there, and I understand that. But I think game 4, game 5, game 6 of the season, when you have to go deeper into your bullpen, that's when I'm worried about the bullpen, quote unquote, is when you have to get into your 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th guys. Today, you shouldn't have had to do that. Today was when your top 4, and you have exactly 4 guys I trust. It could have been 1, 2, 3, 4, and that should have been easy. It's just a bizarre situation because of that.
Well, I think that's where the disconnect is with a lot of fans, because there's a lot of fans who don't trust Brian Snitker, that he thinks those top 4 are his top 4. And we've seen this before with Aaron Bummer last year, with Joe Jimenez the year before, where there are guys on the roster who are considered very good relievers by everybody who watches the team objectively, but by Brian Snitker are lower on the totem pole.
And Dylan Lee, by the way. Dylan Lee's had the same problem.
Dylan Lee's exact same thing.
For a couple of years.
When fans see him bring in Hector Neris in the 7th inning of a 1-run game, what that tells fans is, well, you believe Hector Neris is your 3rd best reliever behind Iglesias. And I'm guessing Pierce Johnson was going to pitch the 8th had Neris gotten through it. But I mean, I just remembered this. Something we shouldn't forget to say. They brought in Grant Holmes. Yeah.
After all this happened, which made, I don't know if that was the plan or not. And there's something weird. Well, there's nothing incredibly weird about Grant Holmes pitching on a day when he's not going to pitch a start until Monday. That's fine. But was he going to pitch the 8th? Like, why is Grant Holmes throwing mop-up duty when you have Suarez on the team to do exactly that, presumably? That's not a huge deal, but I just want to not forget to say that out loud. I was like, wait, now that you're down 7-4, you're bringing in Grant Holmes. Grant Holmes is a lot better than Hector Neris. If you're going to pitch Grant Holmes, you couldn't throw Grant Holmes in the 7th inning.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That did not help.
No.
I mean that because he pitched a clean inning. It was like,
he looked great.
Where the hell was this 1 inning ago? Yeah. But that's the problem, is that fans don't believe that, they don't trust Snitker, that who everybody believes is the top 4 in this bullpen, that Snitker believes that. And today only confirmed that for the pessimistic fans, because, like, look, he had a 1-run lead in the 7th inning, and instead of using the 4 guys that we all know to be the 4 best relievers, he went to the minor league free agent who's been on the team for 3 weeks and through 3 times in spring training. And that's where fans lose trust with Snitker is on decisions like this. And listen, I can't defend that. I can't defend. I think Brian Snitker catches too much most of the time, but like I can't defend that. It's the first game of the year. Everybody's rested. You know, Alex Anthopoulos told everybody Daysbel Hernandez was a big reason why they didn't go out and add somebody in the offseason, because they thought Daysbel Hernandez could really take a step and be a significant right-handed high leverage reliever for them. He never pitched. Is he behind Hector Neris on the depth chart? And is that what you're saying? If he's behind Hector Neris on the depth chart, then you got to go get a reliever in the offseason. If he's not behind him, then you got to pitch him there. One of them has to be true. And that's where you get the anger, you get the frustration. It's not just about the one game, it's about what the one game says. Is Hector Neris the third best? Do they think Hector Neris is the third best reliever on this team? I don't know. I don't think so. I hope not. But if they do, that's a problem.
And I think that the other thing about it is that, again, me and Steven talked about it, Brad, a few weeks ago about how we were in the middle of spring training, and especially about the bullpen, that the questions that were there at the beginning of spring training were still there in the middle of spring training towards the end of it. And they were being asked even louder. And it was mainly about the bullpen. And I don't want to sit here and, try to give some, rah speech, some, encouraging speech or pep talk or anything like that. But when you have a bullpen that for this Braves team has more questions about it than past Braves team, it becomes even more to have an established hierarchy. It becomes even more to know that your manager is going to make the right decisions based on matchups or based on where you are in the games, and he's consistent with those decisions. And the other big thing for me is that he's got confidence in his relievers. Somebody like Daysbel Hernandez, something that's going to help him, something that's going to improve the odds that he's going to deliver on what we hope he can be, is not only him knowing his role, but knowing that he's going to consistently be used in that role to be able to perform. So that's kind of those ripple effects that I think that we're all talking about, is that, again, yes, it's just one game, but many of the things that we cannot see happen consistently happen in this game. There's got to be hierarchy. There's got to be trust. There's got to be confidence. Obviously, there still can be those things. It's not the best start, though, when it comes to knowing that those things are there.
Yeah, and, I think we all know this, and there's a frustration, but the hope would be it's not indicative of what's going to happen. It is one game. I think our brand we don't want to overreact. Obviously, we're sharing some strong opinions because I think we all were frustrated by what happened today. But it is one game. We'll learn more information. This does not mean the sky is falling about the bullpen. This does not mean anything beyond they lost a game today, and the game that was, in our opinion, poorly managed at the end. That's the story of the game for me, which is why we're talking about it for as long as we are on this show, on this one game reaction podcast, because they were leading the game. There are other things that we'll talk about on the show, but that is, for me, and I think for almost everybody that, social media is not real life, but the reaction was basically like the story after the game. So we led with that, and we'll have more coming up in a second. I promise you, on other things that happened in this game, even some hold your breath, guys, potentially some positives, something positive about the game. Just for Shawn, the resident optimist on the show. We'll get into all of that and more in just one moment after Work More Partners.
FT fam, shout out to Homage. Make sure you check out the website and also use our code if you want a little 20% off if you're a first-time shopper. There are so many Major League looks in so many different ways that you can find on T-shirts. There's all kinds of pants. The starter jackets are fire this year, new and more improved, and just every team you're looking for, Kratz, they've got it for you.
I mean, I'm going to hit on the Phillies because they got the old school, the back in the day before I was born, my dad's old school P, but then the starter jacket with the maroon Phillies P on it. Oh, baby, get that, John, because you can wear it all year when it's cold and in the spring when it's warming up.
Yeah, go for it. Heavier, higher quality fill to take you from spring training all the way to the playoffs. We've got them. Check out the website again, homage.com. I love their Grateful Dead baseball line as well. And use the code Foul Territory for 20% off if you are a first-time shopper. Get after it, FT fam.
All right, guys, let us dive in more to what happened beyond the bullpen in this game. There was a lot going on, I promise you. Dealer's choice. Let's save the overall offensive approach. What'd you make of Chris Sale? I'll ask that question because Chris Sale was not like incredibly dominant by Chris Sale's incredibly lofty standard in this game. But anything concerning, anything encouraging? 5 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs. struck out 7, 1 walk. Like, some of the underlying stuff was fine, but anybody have anything alarming about Chris Sale, or just like kind of one of those days where he didn't have his absolute best stuff?
The thing that I'll say quickly is that he just, a game like this for me, actually, we're talking about the fact that I would have rather seen a blowout loss than a close loss like this, and that may not make sense. But a game like this for me actually kind of gives me more trust in Chris Sale than a dominant game against, a team that's not that good. The reason that I say that is because Chris Sale obviously didn't have his best stuff at the first of the game. Control was a bit, questionable. 30 pitches, gave up 2 runs in the first inning. A very unlike Chris Sale experience. But he came right back out, got right back into his stuff, and was able to get the job done in terms of keeping the Braves in the game against one of the better pitchers in the National League, a pitcher who just 6 months ago absolutely dominated us in Game 1 of the NLDS. That, to me, shows that Chris Sale, even though he may not have his best up on any given day, he's still going to do enough to keep the Braves in the game, no matter how quality of an opponent that he's facing. I know we all know this. It was just good to see. Even though he didn't have his best stuff, he still did enough to make sure that the Braves were in the game and in a position to win once he left it.
Yeah, I think I have to go back and look. I think the worst game Chris Sale pitched last year was his first game in the season. If I remember correctly, he did not have a good start his first, I think it was in Philadelphia. And then he was just nails after that. So I don't worry about Chris Sale at all, as long as he's healthy. I mean, you and Scott said it all year last year, but when he's healthy, he's good. And so as long as he's healthy, I don't really care about one outing. It wasn't his best. I mean, he didn't look sharp, but again, it's early April. It's his first start of the year. He'll lock in. I have negative zero concerns about Chris Sale.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just looked this up from last year. He had one, and I remember this now. I've forgotten this. He had only one all year long actual blow up start last year, and it was against Oakland.
That's right. I remember that.
He gave up 8 runs against Oakland, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, he got hammered by Oakland, which is very, very funny when to think back on it.
What was his first? What was his first start?
It was actually similar to this one. He threw 5 1/3 in the loss to the Phillies. He wasn't great. He was just fine in that game. He had one against Miami early in the year where he gave up 5 runs. That might be the one you're thinking about too. But once he settled in, from basically late April on, I think his ERA was in the ones or something stupid after the first 3 or 4 starts. So he was incredible. And I'm with you. I'm not worried at all. It's just we saw him pitch today. That was a lead story. I do want to talk about the offense, and I want to do it in a special way on today's show because this segment is now going to be brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sports Network, where you can now stream Braves games. We'll tell you more about that in just a second, but I wanted to ask you guys both about the offense and the approach of the offense. This is kind of what I was getting to a little bit earlier there were some positives in this game. I think one of them people were kind of noticing that I trust anyway was the approach was a bit better. It's one game, but they took 6 walks, for instance. That's encouraging, I would say, for a team that does not take a lot of walks. One of the guys who is brand new, of course, is Jurickson Profar, who didn't walk but saw a lot of pitches in this game, was a leadoff hitter, and the way he was operating. What did you guys make of that, generally speaking, as far as obviously only scored 4 runs. They had some mistakes too. They had some missed opportunities, which were all too familiar from last year, I will say. But Steven, what do you think of the way the offense looked through exactly one baseball game?
I thought it looked great. I was so encouraged. A couple things. First of all, the number of pitches they saw, the number of walks they took, tremendous indicators of success later when you're seeing that many pitches. Second of all, they were a combined 2 feet away from having another 4 runs on the board because they had 2 homers caught basically at the top of the wall. Base runners everywhere. They saw, I remember tweeting this out. It was the top of the 4th inning. There was 2 outs, and they had seen 107 pitches between Michael King and the guy they brought in after King. So Profar, I said it on the last show we did before the season started. Profar, I think, is an absolutely perfect addition to this lineup. I think I actually am going to end up liking him more in leadoff and Ronnie batting second when Ronnie gets back than maybe the alternative, but that's a fun problem to talk about. But yeah, there's a couple of bats. There was one with Ozzie in the first inning where I thought we got a little bit back to 2024 Braves, but other than that, it was really solid. And, Austin had a line out. Austin Riley had a line out, like 112 mile an hour line out with runners, or at least one runner in scoring position. It very easily could have been 5, 6, 7, 8 runs today. So by process, I was really encouraged. I thought it was fantastic. Exactly what I wanted to see. So many pitches, so many walks, so many opportunities. They didn't cash in on them, but by process, that was a good game.
I want to throw it to Shawn, but one stat to add there to Steven. The Padres threw 195 pitches in 9 innings in this game. So obviously you want more runs. We all understand that, but process-wise, I was encouraged too. Shawn, what did you make of it? And I know you want to talk a little bit about the missed opportunities that were there too, because look, they did have some, and they didn't score enough runs to win the game. So that's part of this too.
And to Steven's point, I think the positives outweigh the negatives at the end of the day, because more often than not, if you have the approach that we have during this game, you're going to see better results. But the thing that I will say is this, is that, it is a bit, makes you a bit queasy. It's a bit uneasy when it comes to seeing those big at-bats, especially those 2 outs with runners in scoring positions early in the game where that, hey, man, we've got to get this run. We really could use this opportunity, and it doesn't occur. And then that second time happens, that third time happens. And even if it's unlucky, it still is a missed opportunity that did not work out. The reason why I have a bit of uneasiness about it is that I don't necessarily think that it's going to be a repeat of last season. But it goes back to me to, if the bullpen is as potentially unreliable as it might be, if this game happens again and again and again, that's got to put more pressure on other parts of the Braves being elite as possible. The starting rotation, for instance, being among the best in the league once again, which it very much could be. The offense being among the best in the league again, which it very much could be. But it has to be. That's what makes me a bit uneasy, gives us a little less room for error. But setting all that negativity aside, I'm going to go back to, being the positive, Shawn, because that's where I'm most natural. The thing that I will say also that really, really encourages me is that the top 4 were all productive in today's game. Jurickson Profar, as well as Austin Riley. Austin Riley looked like he was July Austin Riley, who, if you need to go look up the stats, please do. He's unbelievable. Mid-June to July, he looked that locked in. But that top 4, if they're locked in, that answers a lot of questions for this team. And it's even before you had Ronald Acuna Jr. back. So if we want to talk about a big positive from the game, yes, the takeaway is the offense looked to the level that we had hoped it would look in this game. The hope is that a bit more of these runs can cash in, and obviously the pitching at the end of the game can support it. But not much to complain about the offense, especially the top 4. And hey, Drake Baldwin, he had a pretty good game as well. A walk, a couple of good hits that, unfortunately didn't fall. I think overall he had a pretty good day at the plate, so really encouraged by his debut.
I'm going to ask you guys about Drake Baldwin actually in a different context in a second, plus a little bit of a look ahead to the rest of the weekend. First, a word from our friends at FanDuel Sports Network. You can now stream Braves games through FanDuel Sports Network, and if you use the promo code BASEBALL30, that's promo code BASEBALL30, you can start it off with a 30-day extended free trial at FanDuelSportsNetwork.com/packages. That is FanDuelSportsNetwork.com/packages. Promo code BASEBALL30. Offer expires 5/2/25, $19.99 a month after free trial. Cancel during free trial to avoid charges. Eligibility restrictions apply. Visit FanDuelSportsNetwork.com for details. All right, guys, I want to pick up where Shawn left off and agree with you on Drake Baldwin. Drake Baldwin looked fine to me today, but there was a question, or probably 17 questions that we got that were very similar about him, kind of. And basically, the Padres kind of ran wild a few times in this game on the base pass. I think they ended up with 5 stolen bases. A couple of them were at third base, which is not normally what you would see. And people were asking us what we thought of that and how much of that was on Baldwin versus how much of that was on the pitcher. And I think part of why people were asking even more was because it was Baldwin's debut. And they haven't seen him play a lot. He's this new guy. It's like, okay, is this going to be the Baldwin experience all the time? So what did you think of why the Braves were giving up some extra bases that ended up kind of biting them a couple times in this game?
Yeah, it was a problem. I mean, I think twice they gave up second base to a runner, and then like the next pitch or 2 pitches later, he ends up scoring. So Snit actually talked about this post game. This is another thing I wanted to hear him talk about. And he pretty much put it on the pitchers. He pretty much said, we've got to do a better job holding runners. If you actually watch the game, Drake Baldwin didn't have a chance. I mean, these were like walking, almost running leads that these hit. I mean, Manny Machado, who's a million years old, who runs like a mailbox, had 2 stolen bases in this game because of how massive the leads they were getting. And there must have been something in the scouting report on Sale about one of the guys at second. You know, they were basically guessing that he wasn't even going to stop and look over, and they were getting these massive leads. And yeah, Snit said post-game that the pitchers have to do a better job of looking over, of pausing, of disrupting your normal rhythm so guys can't guess on you like that. But it was a big problem, and it did cost the Braves. I mean, there was multiple rallies that the Padres had that would have been smaller had the Braves not immediately given up extra bases to guy. I mean, you know, you give up a stolen base to Tatis. All right, that's what, you know, Tatis is an elite athlete. Manny Machado has 2 stolen bases in a game against you. You need to correct something because that's the pitchers are not doing their job there. I thought Drake actually looked pretty good. He was really quick on the release, strong throws, but I just didn't think he had a chance.
So you heard it here first, folks. Drake Baldwin innocent, according to Steven. And I tend to agree, by the way. You know, other than that, we can talk about like lineup construction if you guys want to. I know Steven already briefly mentioned something about Profar leading off, even with Ronnie back. It was kind of a surprise to see Ozzie hitting 5th against a righty. Maybe not surprising, just not my favorite thing in the world. Ozzie's not a great left-handed hitter, but it is what it is. And then people were commenting as well about how Jared Kelenic was hitting 9th behind Arcia against a righty. That's probably not the greatest example of confidence in Jared Kelenic. Anybody have a take about that? Or anything else, honestly, because we're in the wrap-up portion of this game because we've kind of already laid it out. But Shawn, do you have any strong lineup construction takes that you want to get off your chest on Thursday night?
I probably would have put Michael Harris 5th above Ozzie Albies. But listen, Ozzie, you know,
Me too.
He did his job in the game.
Yeah, he was good today.
Yeah. It's hard to argue against that. And you know what? Listen, if Ozzie wants to sit here and have a great season from the left side of the plate against right-handed pitchers, okay, we'll take that. But overall, I thought the lineup construction was fine. At the end of the day, I think that there are many positives to take away from this game. I think there's reason to be encouraged from this game. Not to beat a dead horse, it just goes back to the one reason we lost was the biggest concern we had throughout spring training, and that naturally is going to be what everyone kind of looks at. But it's in the past. It's taken care of. The big thing now is, what do you do as a reaction? What do you do now that this has occurred? I know it's just one game, but the concerns that many had came up and were a big reason that it cost you the game. What's Snitker, what's the rest of the team going to do to bounce back like we fully know that they're capable of? And has been a calling card for this team. This team has been so good at bouncing back. I'm not trying to, again, overreact or make too much out of one game. But it was a significant loss in terms of how they did it. How did they bounce back to maybe get an unexpected win on this road trip to make up for it? Like tomorrow, for instance.
Yeah, so I did want to mention one thing about the lineup because Snitker actually brought this up post-game as well. And I actually thought this during the game. I remember thinking this. This team is so much more capable against right-handed pitching because of how balanced it is. How many more left-handers are in the lineup? You know, you add Profar, you add Drake Baldwin. Obviously, Kelenic is playing with Ronnie out. There's just more. It's just harder for right-handed pitchers to get through this lineup than it has been in a long, long time. I mean, we've been talking about adding more left-handed pitching to this lineup for like 4 years now. And I remember watching the game thinking Michael King had a much easier time facing last year's team, not only because of the personnel, but because of the handedness of the personnel. Like the platoon advantage the Braves have created by having more lefties and essentially not solving, but very much helping a problem they've had against right-handed pitching was very noticeable in this game to me. And again, if you're looking at process, if you're trying to project forward, how patient they were, how many walks they took, their batted ball quality, even the ones that were outs, how they're so much more protected against right-handed pitching than they've been in the past. Like the offense is a really big positive coming out of this first game. I know they lost, and I know they only scored 4 runs, but again, by process, there were some things that I really liked in game 1.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you take into account opposing pitcher, Michael King's good, for instance. He wasn't great today, but he's a good pitcher. Ballpark, how many pitches were thrown, all of it, and say, did the Braves have a good offensive game or not? I would say yes. I think they had an encouraging offensive game. It didn't break their way as far as the scoreboard was concerned, but that was not a problem. If anything, it was, I think we were all in agreement, like a relative positive there moving forward into Friday and beyond. Look, we did a little bit of a preview, Scott and I, on Wednesday evening, but the Braves do have 3 more games in this series. And of course, they go to 3 after this in Los Angeles. Probably the biggest, headline starting pitching matchup, maybe of the entire day in baseball, or at least one of the top couple, is Ronaldo Lopez against Dylan Cease on Friday. Dylan Cease, of course, a mildly rumored trade target this winter for the Braves for a few minutes. That didn't happen, of course, but he's good. And Lopez coming off a great season. He didn't look great in the spring, I will say, at least according to me in my eyes. But I think Ronaldo's good, and that'll be a nice little showdown. I wanted to look at the betting market. I haven't seen it yet about like who's favored in the game, but who cares? It's just baseball, The Braves might be, the Braves are actually favored again, I believe. Well, I'm looking at this now, but it doesn't really matter. Anybody have anything that you're looking for in the game on Friday that's particularly interesting beyond like this Ronaldo Lopez look like Ronaldo Lopez?
I want to see if they get a lead. What do they do? I'm being dead serious.
On Yel De Los Santos in the 9th inning.
Yeah, like I want to I want to know what the hierarchy of this bullpen is, or maybe more accurately, I want to know what they think the hierarchy of this bullpen is. I know what I think, but what I think doesn't matter. I want to know what they think. And based on today, I have no idea what they think because they don't think what I think. So I know
if we see Suarez in a tight game on Friday, you might have to have Steven be accompanied by
we'll have questions.
Professionals.
We're gonna have questions. Loud questions. And listen, I will admit I have been the pessimist on the bullpen of the 4 of us. I know that. I've had more questions about the bullpen. I'm okay with the top guys in this bullpen. I really am. I like the top guys in this bullpen. I'm just not confident Snit thinks who I think the top 4 guys are. He thinks the top 4 guys are. And so that's what I want to see. I want to get in another situation like this and see who the guys are that come out of the bullpen, because that's a massive part of the story of the season. And it's a pretty large unanswered question at this moment.
Shawn, anything you're circling for Friday and beyond as the Braves Padres continue their clash in San Diego?
The one thing that I am very interested to see is that so Dylan Cease last year had 2 starts against the Braves. One, we got to him. We had success against him. That was actually in, I believe, San Diego. The other was a dominant start for him. No, the dominant start was in San Diego, and then he struggled against us in Atlanta. But with Dylan Cease, when you compare him to Michael King, I think that Michael King has a bit more control, as well as he uses a bit more of the off-speed movement with his stuff. Dylan Cease is pure power, right? I want to see if the Braves offense goes with the same approach once again, because there's no doubt that they created the opportunities. There's no doubt that they had plenty of good vibes going throughout the game. Let's see them facing another type of pitcher who has, top of, the rotation type stuff. Obviously, I want to see them be able to put the same type of offensive approach 2 games in a row. And let's see if this time around, heck, who knows? They may only be able to score 4 or 5 runs again, but if they can again put the same approach there, good patience, seeing a lot of pitches, getting some opportunities, eventually those opportunities are going to happen. So the offense, when facing 2 quality pitchers who have different approaches to their success, if the Braves can remain consistent with their offensive approach, that's going to be a positive sign for me.
Well, there you have it, folks. 3 more to go in San Diego and then 3 in Los Angeles. That is a 3-man podcast on a Thursday evening. Unless one more time, as I try to play point guard on this Thursday evening, guys, that was a basketball reference. I
got it.
The resident Alabama fan who has a win under their belt today is nodding along. But we can sign off now. I'm glad we got to talk, the 3 of us, under not great circumstances, but we are here talking about baseball. We will have more content. So if you're a new listener or a recurring listener, honestly, we'll have more podcasts. I don't know exactly when. Maybe we'll pop in over the weekend. At the very latest, we'll be back on Sunday. At the very latest. And then, of course, beyond that and late nights. And that's the thing about West Coast trips, fellas, is a lot of late nights on the horizon. They got a little bit of a break in this first weekend series, but the LA games are not early starts. So we'll say that out loud. Where can they find everybody's work? Steven, Shawn, plug yourselves on the way out.
B_outliers on X. Shawn and I still write over at Battery Power periodically here and there, but obviously Hammer Territory is where you're going to see all the takes in the podcast. So appreciate all the support.
Yeah, Stats SAC on Twitter. I haven't really learned Instagram or any of the other social media.
Who needs it?
Yeah, but what's
your Snapchat?
I'm sorry, who? Anywho, so at StatSAC on Twitter /X. A lot of crappy Grizzlies takes, a lot of, occasional, decent Braves takes. But all in all, just really excited that the season is here. I've gotten my negativity out of the way. The great thing about baseball, the wonderful thing about baseball, the wonderful thing about baseball is that 90% of the time during the season, if you have a crappy day, you have the opportunity to make up for it the very next day. And that's why I'm so happy that the season is here. So go Braves, get it done. Let's get to 1-1. And hopefully Ronaldo Lopez will be able to show that last year was not necessarily all that stuff about maybe being a fluke. He can get the job done tomorrow. It'll be an excellent start in multiple ways.
This is why the Shawn and Steven partnership works so well. Shawn can level it out when Steven is in the muck and vice versa. We're living the dream here. I'm just observing. I'm just having fun on Thursday. We miss
I'm
Scott.
pretty sure he made that percentage up, by the way. He said,
yeah, it's fine. It is what it is. And listen,
90% of the time, it's true.
It's something like that. It's close. Listen, Shawn and I have college basketball to watch on Friday. I could say this with not 100% confidence, a lot of confidence. There are more Auburn fans that listen to the show than Michigan fans, so I'm outnumbered almost certainly. And then Shawn's got to deal with Kentucky fans, and that's a whole different ball game. So there's lots of clashes going on Friday night. But Steven
are you guys not in the Elite Eight yet?
Not yet, and I don't think my team's going to get there. We'll see about Shawn's team. Shawn's team's favored to get there. My team is not favored to get there.
The Vols will be there. The Vols will be there.
Shawn's feeling confident. All right, everybody, that's enough of this. Please subscribe to the podcast. Also, check out our friends at FanDuel Sports Network. That's FanDuelSportsNetwork.com/packages. Promo code baseball30 to check out that, and subscribe to the podcast. Follow Shawn, follow Steven, and we'll see everybody next time.